live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome YouTube Live, welcome Blog Talk Radio. We will be forward momentarily with another powerful edition of Revolutionary Hoodoo New Abargani. Greetings, divine, all blessed new moon salutations, and I am now broadcasting another edition of Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes with you now, live and always in archive at your leisure and convenience. I am the DivinePrince, Pan-African spiritualist, practitioner, author, and advisor, Elagoon Oloye Hoodoo Obeya Bokur, sharing with you in all things spiritual, mystical, metaphysical, cosmic, evolutionary, revolutionary, healing, and holistic from a Pan-African Hoodoo world spiritualist perspective. understanding that understanding that all is indeed and truly a blessing if you can just see beyond the veils, for it is all just an illusion and a test and one of the greatest divine mysteries of this life cycle. This is my constant prayer, my mantra, affirmation, reverberation, reiteration, and it is indeed my ever living reality. It is crucial to the very foundation of my inner being, my walk, my works, my demonstration along this divine, all blessed life path and journey. And it is my personal place of power and understanding. The place from where I begin, the place from where I realize and crystallize all my endeavors, understanding that I and I alone create and co-create my divine destiny, and I alone create and co-create my divine, all blessed reality. And so it is. Ashe. Ashe, oh, Ashe. And so for this day, December 26, 2019, I say Habar Gani. Habar Gani, Habar Gani. And I am emanating and vibrating with you and for you live, virtually, verbally, cosmically, quantum, universally, from this working temple of House of the Divine Prince, Type Oceans, Hoodoo Central, in this legendary, historic, beautiful, and most enchanting city in America, New Orleans, Louisiana, the land of my ancestors and those who came before me along this spiritualist, hoodoo obeah life path and journey, passing down the great obeah stick along with the knowledge of the life-giving, healing herbs, roots, plants, rituals, minerals, spirits, and indeed the legends, the stories, the powers that we associate now with this powerful and still yet undiscovered tradition that is ours. I am again saying Habargani for those of you who aren't up to date on your Kiswahili. It means Western Kwanzaa. For those who do acknowledge Kwanzaa, I support Kwanzaa, been supporting Kwanzaa since the beginning, thanks to my mother. I had a proud Afro wearing, beautiful mother in the 60s, late 60s, when Kwanzaa was first celebrated, 1966, the year of my birth, 4 months after my birth, and then of course into the 1970s. I don't want to debate a lot of politics. I don't want to debate a lot of dramas. I don't want to debate a lot of rumors as it relates to any outside aspect of what Kwanzaa is beyond the acknowledgement of ourselves, our culture, our roots, our ancestors. And we have, through Kwanzaa, now created a much bigger platform for which ATR, traditional African-based religious systems, could then really grow and flourish in the 1980s, 1990s, and into the present day. So I acknowledge Kwanzaa and all of those of you who do acknowledge Kwanzaa for the real reasons that we acknowledge Kwanzaa. I invite you to explore a YouTube video that I posted earlier today on my Facebook page entitled The Black Candle, narrated by Maya Angelou. And this is an hour or something. Listen, it's really understated if you look at just the picture, how it's presented, just what's said, and the little bit of information that's entered in the YouTube along with this video. But it's really a documentary of the Black Power movement, the 1960s and 1970s, the conditions in which Kwanzaa were created in, why Dr. Karenga felt the need for Kwanzaa, and then how that has evolved into many other aspects of our community and society. So I want to have a generic conversation about Kwanzaa. I want to talk about unity, and I want to talk about unity in a real way. For those who are familiar, you say Habar Gani. What's the news? The news of the day is Umoja, Umoja, which means unity. And again, I want to kind of look beyond what's most obvious, what's most pushed, what's most promoted, as we generically explore any holiday, any practice, any tradition. And indeed, there can be no real outward demonstrations of unity without having a unified self, without first being whole unto oneself. And I want to say greetings to Keona and everyone who's present in the live chat with me on both Blog Talk Radio and um, YouTube Live. I'm certainly grateful for your assistance, Keona, while I try to do and read and look at so many different things at one time. And so I'm grateful for your help. I offer anyone who has a question, comment, or request to type them in either platform in all capital letters. Give me a moment to respond to it, and I'll be more than happy to answer or respond to your capitalized text here live on air. And of course, if you're listening by way of Blog Talk Radio or would like to listen in and call in by way of Blog Talk Radio, your microphone, if you will, that number is area code 845-277-9143. 845-277-9143. Press the number 1 on your telephone keypad. Please do allow me a moment. I'll unmute your mic and also bring you into this conversation. So chat, Keona, a moment. Let me speak my piece. Okay. So in Kwanzaa, we talk about the celebration of family and community and culture. And indeed, Mulana Karenga, the creator of Kwanzaa, describes unity or emoja as a principle and practice of togetherness in all things good and of mutual benefit, and as a principle and harmonious togetherness, not simply being together, not simply just sharing space, if you will, but a more holistic approach to unity, and a unity that must first begin with the self. Now, for many of us existing in today's culture, today's society, today's world, today's ills, with any level of negativity present in your past, in your childhood, in your family lineage, in your bloodline, in your upbringing, in your experience. We live in a culture, as I expressed yesterday, that is taken negativity or negative energy and sort of turn it into an art form. And so it shows up in our cartoons, it shows up in our sitcoms. It is indeed a part of our reality, and artisans will often seek to use reality as a platform for their creation, for their art. But it also, in my opinion, solidifies to some degree a network of negative energy that would not have existed prior to the internet. A person would have, for example, kept their negative feelings and negative thoughts, their negative ideas about what reality is, what unity is, what life is, mostly to themselves or to their peer group. Whereas now, as my dad used to say, misery likes company. And so you can find any group, any social network online that will support you where you are. It doesn't necessarily mean that people are interested in you growing, in you evolving, in you changing. And so if we feel stuck, if a person feels stuck, if an individual feels stuck, then indeed we send out a vibrational pattern and often attract other stuck people who agree, who empathize, who sympathize, who understand, but who do not necessarily have, even for themselves, the answer. How do we move forward? How do we heal? How do we grow from this? So the pessimist would say, you will not be supported. You will not be celebrated. There is no real show of unity. You will not be loved. You will not be appreciated. And in that relative truth, if that is indeed your relative truth, I say find your purpose. Find your purpose. But if you are a creator, a self-creator, understand the power of recreating your reality. And even if the illusion is presented of disharmony, disunity, lack of support, lack of celebration, lack of love, lack of appreciation, lack of purpose, find your purpose. And that purpose should be greater than yourself. Greater than yourself. Artisans perform art, create art, produce art. And it's easy to say that we, because I count myself in the number of artisans, produce art just for self-gratification, just to hear our thoughts crystallize, formalize in some way outside our heads, just for ourselves. Often the art is intended to shape the world, shape feelings and emotions and consciousness, and allow each individual the opportunity to view the art, see the art, to internalize the art, take it from an understanding and take it into a deeper level of understanding and find their own place in what's being produced. When we say unity, however, we're not talking about art. We're talking about something that takes on arms and legs and a head and a body in the spirit realm based on how each person identifies with unity and what unity is. People unify for all sorts of reasons in 2020. People unify for economics. People unify for power and control. People unify for leverage. And it does not always mean that there's any real stuff there behind that unity that ties them at any deeper level. And the idea of family and community is implied. It's written into Kwanzaa. It's written into how we use emoji and the concept of unity right from the beginning. Adrian Dorsey, please forgive me. I'm going to answer your question. Just give me a second, okay? Just give me another minute and I'm going to answer your question. So even as we approach the idea of umoja and unity, we first must be undivided within ourselves. And many of us are still divided within ourselves. Even in the idea of stepping away from what many view as a tradition, what others view as religion, a tradition based in a religion, about Christmas and Christmastide and Christianity and all the stuff that goes along with that. And so you're already, and I don't want to skip ahead in our Kwanzaa principles, but you're already setting a path of self-determined destiny by choosing to honor and acknowledge something because you want to, because it reinforces something in you, in your family, in yourself that helps you to continue to evolve as a conscious being, as a person who knows who they are, who understands where you come from, who understands the history, who understands the past, and then can use this vehicle, which are these 7 principles of Kwanzaa, to carry yourself and the community forward. I asked yesterday, what are you doing right now? Not at this moment, not watching me, hearing me, but what are you really doing right now? Are you just living? Are you just existing? Are you just paying bills? Are you just walking through, like a robot, like on autopilot, doing what you feel you have to do, what's necessary? Are you walking in your truth? Are you indeed walking with a sense of purpose? Another principle later down in the week. And I think you have to be whole in these principles. Just like we have to be whole in terms of our 7 chakras. Just like we have to be whole in terms of operating in Lukomi or Voodoo or Santeria appropriately and in order and in progressive order, having built a foundation, having created a body, but ultimately operating from a head that's clear about why you're here, why you're doing it, and what you're doing it for. So my question is not shade. My question is, what are you doing? What are you really doing? And are you feeding your purpose? Is it built into your destiny? Are you walking truly in the path that's right for you, that mirrors you, that not only mirrors you, but allows an opportunity for you to continue to grow and advance and get to the next level and the next level, particularly those levels that we can't immediately see or immediately comprehend. We often move from a reactionary, defensive position, and life sort of happens, and then we respond to it, as opposed to having the time and the forethought to take a breath, to breathe, to take in some fresh air, some oxygen, to allow the sun to hit your face, to allow the moonlight to hit your face, to see the stars on the darkest night, which is the new moon, and see other things beyond just our everyday waking reality. I think all of that is implied, not necessarily written or instructed, in just coming to unity being the very first principle that Dr. Karenga decided to acknowledge in the system, in the celebration that we now know as Kwanzaa. I appreciate each and every one of you for being present. Those of you who I've recognized by name, those of you who I haven't, please forgive me. I acknowledge each and every one of you. Thank you, Robin Johnson, from hailing from my land, from where my people are in Mississippi. I'm grateful for Adrian Dorsey and everyone who's present. Please, Adrian and all others listening, type your questions in all capitals. It absolutely helps me in seeing and identifying your questions sooner so that I can respond to you directly on air. And if I've skipped a question, please forgive me. Adrian's question just sort of jumped out at me. Adrian Dorsey says, Alapia, please explain how immaterial entities benefit from material food and water, and how. If we go back, Adrian, to earlier cultures, earlier practices, earlier systems, and often we, look at ancient Egypt, we look at Kemet, we look at Meroe, we look at Nubia, we look at Mesopotamia. We look at the oldest archaeologically documented cultures that we know of. And I say archaeologically documented because often without stone, without copper, without items that suggest habitat, a lifestyle, a way of doing something, then often these older cultures like Lemuria, like Atlantis, still sort of exist in this realm of the unknown. So if we look at ancient Egypt, for instance, and the idea of presenting food and water and offering, not just to the god, which is about your question, and I'm going to explain that directly, but also to the greater culture, particularly in the context of unity. So the grain, the wine, the fruits of the efforts of the people were being gathered in these ritual spaces, ultimately in the right condition for the benefit of all, not just to feed the power, the deity, the Loa, the Orisha, the ancestor. Now there are some offerings that we present, that we lay down, that we don't intend for human consumption, that is indeed specifically for the power that we're trying to feed, that we're trying to placate. And then there are other produce, beverages, cooked food items that are also presented, that are sort of sanctified, if you will. Christians might look at that as like praying over their food, uh, consecrating food, even to a power, to a deity, and then it lending its ashe, which is a Yoruba word, ashe, or energy, or power, or gift unto the food, and then consumption of that. So there's always this practical application in an African indigenous context, as well as sort of the spiritual application of offering material entities benefit from material foods, water, and the like. And so the statuary or the shrine or the place in which the offering is being presented, which is often going to be presented in nature, even if presented in this sacred space, it's then ultimately carried out in nature. It's sort of a emblematic, symbolic process. There's actually a word for that in ancient Egyptian Heka or magic, and in a more modern context, it doesn't readily come to my mind. If you give me a moment, I'll find it. But it suggests, as it is above, so shall it be below. That we sort of do replicate, act out, give energy to in this material realm ultimately resonates back to the spirit realm. Now, another way of looking at that might be, how do you apply your goods? How do you apply your gifts? How do you then apply your wages? Often, as I started out, it's paying the bills, it's keeping the lights on, it's keeping a roof over yourself and your family's head, particularly in this more modernized context. But many of these practices, these traditions of offering food, offering beverage, offering cigar, offering smoke, have its origin in much older cultures that predate our concerns about the energy company, the water bill, gas for your vehicle, etc. We're talking about people who lived closer to the land, closer to the cycles of the moon, as well as the sun, the cycles that affect crop reproduction, that affect water availability or the lack thereof, things that are nature based. And voodoo is nature. I don't know if this is your first time listening to me or if you've heard me say this before, but voodoo is indeed nature. And so without nature, there really is no voodoo, no Ifa, no Akan, in terms of spiritual practice and the relationship. So even if we look at, I'm not suggesting anyone believe or not believe, but even if we look at, books like the Old Testament, where sacrifices are being made, offerings are being made, and are said to be consecrated, created by the God, Allah, Jehovah, however those who view the books view God. I have that knowledge and understanding, as many do, that voodoo sort of predates all of that, that sort of ritualized practice. Often the modern mainstream religions say that's pagan, sort of group it all in together into this pot, which sometimes gets also mixed into the witchcraft pot. But there's a connection between that which we reinforce in the physical. Even there's this modern thing of creating vision boards. And so you put the things that you want, you put the things that you desire on this vision board with the understanding that it somehow keeps it fresh in your, not just fresh in your mind or in the forefront of your consciousness, but somehow moves it then into a realm of consciousness that's not quite explainable by science, that creates and recreates our reality based on what we believe. And sometimes seeing something reinforces belief. Hewing a god, a pharaoh, creating a symbol, a concept that resonates with the power, feeds that power, and then creates this energy that we call ashe, that the ancient Egyptians might have called Heka, that then fuels some reality manifestation that is calculable. Otherwise, we have to really question why has humanity, even in the presence of math, even in the presence of science, held on to beliefs of gods and magic and voodoo and our ability to sort of manipulate consciousness. I've talked about Einstein, who sort of created and wrote our understanding of string theory. And in that, it is said that we have to exist in at least 11 dimensional spaces all at once in order for our reality, our sense of conscious reality, to be what we know it to be. And so he went on to explain that in each of those realities, there's another reality that mirrors this reality, but I might be wearing gold. I might be wearing, pink. I might be wearing American clothes, cowboy outfit. But then there are that go into what we call our imagination, other life forms, other shapes of life, other explanations and definitions of what humanity is, or even what our reality is. And so when we dream or imagine, or artisans, who I view as another form of spiritualists, because they go in and out of this creative space that we relegate to this box of imagination. But string theory and mathematics and spiritual science says that we create and recreate in that realm, and it then absolutely affects what we experience on the material level as our reality. So we feed ancestors and we feed gods and orishas and loas and deities with the understanding that they absorb our energy, and the energy implied and in some case embedded in the organic material that's being presented. And so that's why we do it. That's why we do it. For some of us, it's not just about faith-based activity. It's about reliable, repeatable, experience-based exchanges with spirit. And so I often argue that this is available to everyone. This is available to anyone who then chooses to become aware of it, to become a conscious of it, to take it into their spirit. It's like sitting in the classroom and the teacher's talking and you're 13 or 12 and your eyes are glazing over and you're thinking about the next party or being at the roller skate party or being at the go-go or being out outside of this space and time. And so your mind literally leaves that space and you miss whole sections of what's being said, what's being written on the chalkboard, what other children in the classroom are saying. But you might be locked into a daydream. You might be locked into a thought, deep into a thought. And so science and math does suggest that we're now entering another creative space, another interdimensional realm of consciousness. And so in doing these ceremonies, these rituals, these acts that appear to be, just physical, some would say just the act of kneeling and praying on the mat and standing up again is just a physical act. A Muslim would argue that they're going through an activity that powers them up and shuts down some of their more mundane carnal activities and allows them to then focus in on spirit. As a quantum metaphysician, I would say allows them to first ground, because they're putting their forehead on the ground, and there's an electromagnetic, gravitational, scientific thing that's happening there, and then allowing yourself to be open to spirit. It's something that humans have learned to do something, to go through some kind of action, to connect with. But I also suggest that the more you do it, the more activity and uh, the more lucidness you have in the spirit realm. I don't say you have less of a dependence on your rituals. Doesn't mean you may not need them, want them, apply them. But what happens when you don't have access to your Bible, your Quran, your crystal, your palm nuts, your cowrie shells, your shrine? What happens to the brother and sister that's incarcerated, the brother and sister that goes through the Hurricane Katrina like disaster, loses all their stuff, and then our connection to spirit there. So there's an implied understanding in your question, Adrian, about our sort of codependency to some degree on our tools. So that's why I often say if there's a shortcut, it's crystal. It's quartz crystal because it's going to affect the wiring, the consciousness, how we view ourselves, how we view reality, how we see ourselves in terms of our position in reality within this idea of what unity is. I have not always felt unified. As a kid on the street at 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, I didn't always feel unified. Not from a Christian community, not from the family community, not from within my peer group. Many of my peers couldn't relate to what I was experiencing. Many of my peers couldn't relate to what I was going through. And I think the ultimate test, Adrian, for any belief, any ideology is that wilderness period. Either the self-imposed wilderness or the one that is somehow inadvertently imposed on you in life, where you don't have access to your tools, to your stuff, to your gadgets. Now you don't even have your cell phone and you can't remember all your phone numbers. Now you can't pull up, Google up, Bing up a website. What then does your belief, does your ideology, do your gods, do your ancestors mean to you then? And how then do we connect? And so we fall back on what we know. We fall back on what we can remember. We fall back on what has been demonstrated, and in that environment where you're forced, like imprisonment, or disaster, to be in a space where you have to be quiet and you have to be still. Many of the things that is suggested in many of the world cultures, in many of the world traditions, a way of just being still. And so our feeding of the spirits, feeding of the saints, feeding of the deities, is really an outward show, a physical show of something that's really going on inwardly, and then too from within the spirit realm. In the case where the herbs, the airway, the produce, the water is then being applied inwardly, internally, then of course there's that healing element that's natural to nature. But without spirit, I'm not sure what life would be without spirit, without the spirit element. Indeed, human will is attached to spirit, and our control of belief, our control of God, and our connection to God, and how we interact in and out of God. And in my own experience, that evolves and continues to evolve with knowledge, with age, um, indeed with experience. Um, just like science, we test things, we test knowledge. And I tested feeding the ancestors. I tested for myself feeding the spirits. I've tested for myself the effect of libation, real libation. And I've tested it from not just voodoo, but from many religious perspectives. I indeed was and experienced many other religions before I settled into voodoo um, as my vocation. I've been Christian, I've been Rastafarian, I've been Muslim, I've read other and practiced other and been a part of other ideologies and other societies and other ways of sort of viewing things. And there's a commonality that you find. There's a thread that runs through it that sort of connects these traditions by experience. Um, I would say that that's unique. It's unique in today's culture where everyone doesn't necessarily have the wherewithal, the will, the want to, the desire to sort of experience those traditions in the way that I did. So often people are locked into one thing. Usually that's the thing that your parent, whoever raised you, put on to you. And then through life, you come to a settle into an understanding, a place of seeing things that mirrors your inner truth. Everyone to be a part of the conversation. If you're in the Blog Talk Radio chat room or the YouTube live chat room, just type your questions, please, in all capital letters. That makes it easier for me to decipher them from the general conversation. And of course, I invite you to call in and listen in to my live microphone for you, my live listen and call in number at area code 845-277-9143. 845-277-9143 by way of Blog Talk Radio. We are indeed unified at the universal level. Whatever you think the universe is and how far the universe reaches out or to what extent is the edge or the end of our universe, whether you're a scientist or a metaphysician or just a common everyday person who has no knowledge or interest in math or science or astrology or any of that, just imagine just the edges, the confines of that universe. And indeed, we are one in that. And if that's too broad a vision for your third eye at this time, just the earth itself, we are one in that one asteroid, one large piece of ice, one large rock from outer space could really wipe out all humanity, could really wipe out all life. But we also see that macrocosmic event at a microcosmic level in every cigarette butt that's thrown down, every piece of plastic that's thrown down, every drinking straw that's thrown down to the ground, that ends up in our water, that ends up in our ground, that ends up in nature. So there is indeed a oneness about life, about humanity. We say we're one in humanity. We are all one because of, us having a biological commonality, a genetic commonality, sharing our branch of the DNA tree. And we isolate ourselves from the rocks, from the plants, from the insects, from indeed other planets and other things that exist in our known sense of what the universe is. So in looking at what unity is, I found that if you're divided in yourself, you can't come wholly to an understanding, to a concept of unity. Whether it's in your marriage, whether it's in your relationship, your partnership, your friendships, your community ships, your co-workerships, all the various relationships that we have outside of ourselves. We must have a unified sense of self. The fact that we experience division in thoughts, division in ideas, and then that's often shaped from outside us. The Republican, Democratic thing, the red, blue thing, the evolution versus the non-believers of evolution versus, all of those things only add extra weight in terms of thought forms and energy and how we view what unity is. We often see unity without even considering sometimes world African, trans-African, pan-African unity, or the unity that is the whole of humanity. So in your exploration of unity today, of emoji today, be sure you're considering that you're unified within in terms of how you feel and how you're standing in your truth and how you're walking in your truth. Don't let this be another year of division between how you earn your living and what you really want to do. Don't let this be another year of division between the life that you're living versus the one you really want to live, the one you really want to be your truth. Don't let this be another year that you look over your book, that you look over your self-employment idea, that you look over your creative ideas, that you look over the ideas that you dream about, that you think about, that you envision bring change, not just to yourself, but to the greater of humanity. Find purpose. Find purpose. My purpose, if it's not clear, is voodoo, revolutionary revival of voodoo, the understanding of the revolutionary, revivalistic power of voodoo, which is embedded in the history of the world history of voodoo and how we have come to know and understand voodoo in the Haitian revolutionary story, in the revolutionary story of the Africans here in America, and how we've had to transcend all manner of racism and white supremacy and prejudices and systematic blocks that present an illusion of disunity, an illusion of dividedness that we all have to overcome each and every day. Sometimes just in our employment, sometimes just in how we earn our living, sometimes just in the equality that might exist or not in your relationships and how you communicate in your community among yourselves. So let this be a day that we truly acknowledge unity from a pure, truer sense of understanding of who we are and how we envision ourselves in the coming years, in the coming decades. It's an opportunity to start a new decade, a new time, a new trend, a new fad. Much of what we've debated and argued over and tripped over will wither away into illusion in the coming years, and we'll move on to the next thing. Uh, that's both exhilarating and depressing at the same time. Some things will get worse, indeed worse. Others will get better and will indeed get better. And your choice of vision will affect your position in that, will affect, are you going up, are you coming down? Are you getting it together, or are you coming apart? Is your glass indeed half full or half empty? Greetings, each and everyone who's taken the time out to be present here with me at high noon U.S. Central Standard Time for another edition of Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes. Please do type your questions in all capital letters in the chat room so that I may see it and readily identify it. Also, you can call in to 845-277-9143. 845-277-9143. Please press number 1 on when you're ready with your question, comment, or request. This is pomegranate juice, straight pomegranate juice. So it has that same effect of drinking lemon or lime and your cheeks pull in. So that's why I sound like that right after I sip that pomegranate juice. I'm grateful for you, Kiona, and your help and your assistance in helping me to maintain some kind of vision and order on what's happening in the chat. I also invite you to please encourage questions or comments and type them in all capital letters so that I can see them. Adrian Dorsey, you didn't respond, so I hope I was able to answer the question. I'm not expecting you to be in agreement, but that I answered your question in some kind of way. that makes sense and has some sort of clarity. If there's not a question immediately, I'm going to move into your New Year's. I'm going to skip Kwanzaa. I'm going to handle Kwanzaa from day to day. But I'm going to talk about your preparations for New Year's and New Year's Eve and your hoodoo and your root work and your conjure in association with that. Even as Africans in America, we have traditions that many follow, adhere to, whether out of superstition or belief or just because it's a tradition. And you prepare your black-eyed peas and your hominy grits and many other delicacies and delights as a part of your crossing into the New Year's celebration. You get a new broom and have that new broom by your front door. you prepare to allow a male to enter your house first on New Year's Day. Oh, well, this is things that we do in New Orleans. And these are things that have made their way into the Southern culture. So you see people in Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, Georgia, also the Carolinas, also carrying out many of these activities and traditions, often not even knowing why. Because grandmama did it, because big mama did it, because other folks before you did it. And the idea that it was voodoo or hoodoo or conjure at all never crossed your mind or was never explained to you. So I welcome your questions, your comments, your requests. Greetings, T. Warner. Um, I didn't see that question mark, so I didn't see your question at first. Forgive me. Thank you, Kiona, for your help. T. Warner's question is, if someone is cursed, can that energy affect other people around them? Oh, indeed, absolutely. A cursed person, place, or thing can affect other people, places, or things around it. Now, before I get into sort of the hoodoo idea of that, the conjure idea of that, just from a scientific perspective, understanding that all energy is eternal. All energy is created at the Big Bang, at the moment of the Big Bang, and so it has sort of dispersed, just like our universe, and carried out, and has hit the walls or the limits of the universe, and has reverberated back, and has made its way into every atom, molecule, energy structure, dark matter structure in our universe, and probably then reverberate back again based on how it then subsequently passed through these objects, and indeed how it passed through physical objects and locational based objects. It's not going to have quite the same effect as how it passes through humanity, because we then have consciousness. We then are part God, part goddess, part of the creative universe. And so we then can affect how we accept or don't accept or internalize or release that energy, and how we then send it back. So a negative thing, a cursed thing, a dark energy form or matter can pass through you. And according to science, you may not be able to see it, feel it, hear it, taste it, measure it, but as feel it from a physical perspective. But as spirit forms, which we are partly part physical, but we're also part spirit forms, we feel things that can't quite be measured. We feel things that don't quite make any scientific, logical sense. Like you're in line, at the grocery store, and you get a vibe from a particular person, place, thing, and then 5 o'clock news, that person is there. In fact, that's happened to me before. I was sort of attending these therapeutic groups, I'll say, because of the laws and rules of the groups. I don't want to say too much about the groups. This was somewhere in the Carolinas, back in the day, back in the 90s. And there was a guy there who I befriended, was kind of odd and quirky, but I'm odd and quirky. And so we connected on some energetic level. Uh, Brought the guy home to meet my mama. May have had a meal together, had a deep discussion together. And 3 or 4 days later, this guy is on the news having robbed a bank, in our town, and is on his way now to prison. So there are these intersections with energy that we all make, T. Warner, whether it be the thing, the person, place, thing that is indeed accursed, um, or just energy that we intersect with. Sometimes we pick it up, sometimes we carry it with us, sometimes we take it in. But when you say curse and accursed, we often think of that thing that is either self-created or consciously created. The curse that someone verbalizes, the curse that someone projects from their consciousness, because all curses are not verbalized. Someone who's murdered, someone who's burnt up somewhere, unfortunately, God forbid, can leave an energy that can show up like a curse, depending on the circumstances around the death, around the creation of that energy and the projection of that energy. So indeed, other people can not only feel it and perceive it, but be affected by it, and can be affected by it subconsciously. You're not always conscious of the effects, no more than you are always conscious that you've picked up the cold or flu virus. No more than you're always conscious that you've just, gone through the drive-through or passed through the checkout or had an interaction, with the secretary, the receptionist, whomever, and they've transferred a negative energy to you. And you aren't always conscious of the moment in which that happens. Sometimes it happens, and before you know it, you're both tense, you're both elevated at the voice level, and you don't quite understand why, or quite be able to piece the origins of that thing together. So, absolutely, can a person, place, or thing that is cursed, T. Warner, then affect the people, places, and things around it? There are people who have the power and the ability to hold, control, maintain something that is otherwise said to be cursed by the sheer force and power of their own light, their own will. Now, that does not mean that that thing still does not need to be contained, um, maintained, protected from other folk. I have a Ouija board that I keep from other folk, that I don't allow people to play with, that I don't even myself play with or manipulate in any way. There are covies and pots and bottles and jars which are said to contain a demon or jinn or a curse. And some of these things surprisingly are being sold online. And people are buying them, off of Amazon and whatnot. It's amazing to me. I actually saw a video, I think a news report somewhere, someone testing one of these things, and the subsequent result of what happened to him and around him after having opened this spirit box, which was deemed to be either accursed or contained some sort of demon or jinn. I'm not sure exactly how the box was originally described on this program that I saw. But the idea of something being cursed, being dark, being wicked, and then that being a person, place, or thing has been documented throughout culture, throughout the time of humanity. So I'm answering your question, T. Warner, hopefully to the best of my ability. But to some degree, I'm also responding to Adrian in that our idea that material things and material possessions have an energy that can either be fed or if not fed, acknowledge or respond to, or have it then affect um, humanity. I'm not a proselytizer in terms of religion. I'm not here to convert you or anyone else in terms of voodoo or Hecca or magic or anything else. I am here to share my experience with it. My opinion and my experience kind of go hand in hand, if you will. But I'm always open to any question. I'm open to criticism. I'm open to the critic. Um, so I have no feelings about it. But absolutely, a thing, a person, or place can be cursed or cursed, and then there's a response to that that then sets itself up as either us acknowledging some power, some force in terms of feeding material things to a then material shrine or place, Adrian, and then of course T. Warner. Yeah, absolutely. A cursed person, place, or thing or location can affect others who are not vibrating at a certain light octave, who are not necessarily spiritually protected, who may not always be aware. There are reasons why some people are affected and affected to the degree that they are, and others seemingly are not affected or not immediately affected when they encounter these things. Let's see. I think the next question, Adrian Dorsey, is how else may a talisman be utilized other than just wearing them? Oh, that's a great question. After you've spent that 90 days or more, that year or more, that 30 years or more wearing a stone or crystal, you've absolutely built up an energetic connection to it. And if you've been aware of it, conscious of it, keeping a journal, doing active activities, mentalism, using your mind and your spirit with the stone, then there's now a relationship that can be formed with the stone to address any particular question, concern. For instance, going into an environment of danger, going into a negative environment, literally or figuratively, you can choose to breathe. You can choose to consciously amplify your light and the light that passes through your talisman, giving it that ability to strengthen not just your aura, but the many other layers of energy that surround us as a human, but also as a spirit form. You could learn to send that energy through your hands, through your consciousness, through your eyes, through your third eye, with conscious will. Just being conscious of it, just choosing to want to use your power, your energy in a greater way, in a more projective way. Of course, there are books and courses and mentors and me and people you can get with who can teach you how to do that, teach you how to apply that. I actually mailed somebody a crystal some time ago. I can't even remember exactly who it was from this audience who didn't seem to care about following up with me about how to use stone or how to apply it. So it's absolutely more than just wearing the talisman, Adrian. Um, for some sense of it's a good luck charm, or some sense of it's going to now, just sort of do its thing. And like a computer, it does its thing, but it's greatly affected by input, by what we put into it, by what we project into the stone and ask to be mirrored back. So talismans can be used then to protect, then to help you in acquiring, procuring what you need, what you desire, opportunities, opening doorways that your unity network might not be opening for you. Managing to get you into people, places, and things in a way that we might not have without that extra boost. And you may have been present to hear me describe the utilizing and the wearing of quartz and gemstone talismans as a outward demonstration of sort of our internalizing minerals, vitamins through food and through vitamins in a way that our normal waking minds are more commonly aware of. So we energetically take in these frequencies and they alter and assist in rebuilding our frequencies that allow us to see clearly, that allow us to project more focused energy, more focused thought forms, more focused energetic forms of what we envision our reality to be. So your talisman then can project and help you in that. Your talisman can assist you with thievery. We often think about the cursed item or the person becoming a curse by violating sacred space or righteous space. And indeed, there are curses attached to the violation of sacred items. People who have a sanctity about their self, and of course, sacred space that is consciously set up and or created. I've told the story of bad things happening to people who violated my space. Me physically, my items, or the temple space in which my shrines and items have housed. And you can tell by just the tone of my voice, I don't take any pleasure in the telling or retelling of stories because they're tragic. And so the idea of death and people dying only fuels some of the more imaginative, creative, entertainment-based, horror book-based ideas of how people want to view voodoo. There's the first that idea of just doing right. There's first that idea of just karmic law. What you send out comes back to you. There's first just that idea of living and breathing and emitting an energy, a vibration that you wholeheartedly expect to be reciprocated unto you. If not directly through your community, then certainly from God and from the ancestors and from life itself. And that's been my demonstration. I don't always expect reciprocity from man, from humanity, because humanity, man, individuals are fallible, are part clay and divine at the same time. So there's always an opportunity for man or woman or child to do wrong, to do harm, at a deeper level, to choose darkness, to choose evil, to choose to do wickedness. And there's a energy attachment set up in that is also able to create and recreate cursed people, places, and things. So it could be said that not my stuff was cursed, but that the idea that someone would violate the sanctity of a space that they were very well aware of before coming in. We ain't talking about a stranger coming in who don't know, who don't understand, who didn't know what was already happening. We're talking about someone who absolutely knew what was going on, what was happening, and then choose to not, violate me or refuse to acknowledge me, but then to refuse to acknowledge what is and what has been set up and established to be sacred. And then that can create a curse. We can curse ourselves, much like the story of Job. And his wife begged him to curse himself. Why continue to allow these tragedies to happen? Curse God, which is a way of cursing yourself. You curse God, you curse yourself. You curse yourself, you curse God. And that's why the idea of suicide in many religions is considered to be a wicked act. It's considered to be an act that harms the soul, doesn't alleviate your pain, in fact forces you to then repeat life, repeat the lessons, repeat the cycles, because we've contracted to live. We've contracted to come and operate as gods and goddesses in this space. So, let's see. I get to answering questions and I digress sometimes, and I have to recenter myself on where my questions are. And I may be skipping around a little bit because things keep moving on me. There's no way to pause, stop, or put a hold on the movement in this particular chat. I can do it in Blog Talk Radio, but I cannot do it in YouTube Live. I hope I'm explaining questions clearly and effectively, while at the same time trying to go back and okay, universal. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. Um, your question is, what is our understanding of the third eye? The third eye has a physical, biological, chemical, hormonal uh, implication, and then also has that spiritual um, implication. So the pituitary gland, that gland that exists right behind your third eye in your physical body, is said to contribute to our hormonal chemical balance. So if your hormones are off, your chemical balance is off, we say that leads to physical maladies. We say that leads to psychological and mental maladies. So if your pineal glands and other various parts of your body are calcified, for instance, or full of toxins, for instance, at the biological level, then you then cannot expect your child to go to school and to learn. You can't expect the adult to always function and act healthy and to think clearly and to be able to move forward in life if they're not getting sort of the proper balance of nutrients, exercise, rest, chemical proportions, hormonal proportions in the body. And so that is then said to affect our ability to see color and to see dreams and to see visions and to see beyond the physical. Our pituitary glands and our third eye, to some degree, assist us in perceiving things, even in our normal physical waking reality, that we don't see clearly. For instance, we don't see all of this as clearly as we think we're seeing it on a video screen or in a picture. There are bits and pieces that are missing, that are not passing through our cipher and being absolutely scanned. And so your mind, your consciousness, your third eye then helps you to piece together what's missing. Now, we see that demonstrated in the word games that get passed around on social media, where the first letter and the last letter have to be exacting. But then you can mix up the letters in between as long as you maintain grammatical truth. And certain people, certain third eyes will be able to still understand look means look, even if it's spelled L-U-U-K or L, question mark K. And of course, in correspondence with what came before it and what came after it. Now, we understand that that's happening to some degree two-dimensionally, but it's also for us happening three-dimensionally, fourth-dimensionally, fifth-dimensionally, etc. So not only are you looking at what I typed or Kiona typed or Adrian typed, but you're also processing what you've seen before, what you've seen in the past, in order to formulate what you believe you're seeing and perceiving right now. And of course, that feeds into the future. We've all read something, looked at something, heard something, and could swore we heard something very clearly, very specifically, only to rewind or reread and realize something else was said. But in that moment of reality, it was true. It was real. And in one of those other 11 dimensional spaces that string theory says that we live and exist in, it absolutely is true. So the idea of third eye is more than just some philosophical, spiritual mumbo jumbo that we sort of talk about. We make these memes, and our third eye is open. This is what it looked like when your third eye is open, all this kind of stuff, which has a relative truth about it. But you're asking a real serious question about that. And I think without the opening of the third eye, without the divine mathematical quantum metaphysical understanding of what three is and what it means and how it manifests at every level. It is just something we say. It is just a philosophy, but it's a real thing. As a parent, you use your third eye when you communicate with your children sometimes. Your children don't always have to tell you. Your children don't always have to go into detail. You don't always have to open that door to already be able to envision, and estimate correctly what the condition on the other side of that room is going to be, or what the other side of that, the inside of that cabinet or that refrigerator is going to look like. Because there's some experience there. There's some digital information laid down there. So our third eye allows us to dream, to envision, to be more than just earth-based, more than just physical, more than just trapped in physicality, what we see, what can be measured, what can be taste, versus that which is not always readily explainable, readily measurable, which can't always be seen, felt, or perceived in a physical senses. Our whole idea of what prosperity is, what happiness is, what success is, what does that feel like? What does that look like? Which shape does that take? What formula, is required to sort of produce that, to mix that, and then have it be comparable to the individual. Those are things that are said to be ethereal or said to be in the realm of not quite tangible. And so our idea of what third eye is has that imaginative, creative element to it, but it absolutely has that pituitary gland, brain-based, nerve system-based, consciousness-based element to it that feeds our ability to have mobility in the spirit realm. Some of us are just grounded. Ain't never heard the voice of God, ain't never seen an angel, ain't never had a encounter with a ghost, have never seen, heard, felt, experienced an alien, have never seen anything supernatural that they couldn't explain. My heart goes out to a person that grounded. I offer that you are only living 50% of your life. You're missing a great deal of what's really going on in the world. If you can't feel, if we can't see, if we can't experience. And so the idea of quenching and killing and numbing our sense of feeling in today's culture, our numbing ourselves to violence and to tragedy and to negative news every day on the TV and in social media. We're also numbing our nerve system. We're also numbing our pituitary gland. We're also numbing our heart and our emotions and our spiritual wiring to things that exist beyond what can be readily perceived as material, as physical, as carnal. So the third eye, and the opening of the third eye, and the activity of the third eye is important, in my opinion, to understanding any world tradition, any world religion. Christians don't teach that. I don't believe Muslims teach that. I don't believe Hebrew Israelites necessarily teach that. But I think that If your third eye is not open, if you aren't able to open yourself up to even the belief of spirit, God, emissaries of spirit, of God, and ultimately of Satan or the devil and the negative forces and powers, then it makes it real hard for you to understand psychic reading. It makes it real hard for you to understand faith healing. It makes it very hard for you to understand voodoo, magic, witchcraft, or any of these things. And that's why I often go back and forth between the scientific, Freud, string theory, quantum metaphysical aspects of these practices and traditions, and then also the more ethereal, spiritual, nature, religious-based nature of these practices and these traditions, because it is really about red and blue, left brain and right brain, integration of two ways of seeing and viewing things. Even our physical eyes see things upside down and in reverse. And then it is our consciousness, our brains, along with our third eye, that gives us the so-called vision that we believe that we have. And when we look at other forms of nature, how do plants see? How do animals see? How do birds see? How do insects see? How do worms see? How do bats see? Then we have to also consider the other frequencies, the other wavelengths, the other ways in which we as gods and humans see and perceive things. And we don't see and perceive everything based on what's physical, what's dimensional, what's tangible. So the third eye is critical to any work, any understanding, to seeing beyond the veils, to seeing beyond what's gifted to us or enforced on us, if you will. Help me out, Keon, if I'm missing a question. I've skipped around a little bit, but I think I've covered all the questions that are present in the live chat. Yeah, there are many people who can't feel love, who can't perceive love. I offer you that there are people who have not experienced love and don't know what that is, who can't comprehend that. I think we also take for granted that my experience is your experience, that your experience is everybody's experience. And again, when we say celebrate, when we say holiday, when we say success, when we say love, we're assuming that everyone else has that experience. We're assuming that everyone else has that understanding. We're assuming that everyone else has had that experience. And so too experiences things through the same prism as you do or I do. Contacting your spirit guides, that's a great question. That can also be a complex question. I suggest the first and safest way is to just invite intervention. Invite your ancestors, invite God. God is how you view it, to show you, to offer clarity, to offer protection, but more importantly, to prove themselves, to demonstrate themselves, to show up in a way that's real for you, that's tangible for you. That's something that I personally did even before interacting directly with, trying to contact directly with spirit guides. It was this whole idea of what is God, who is God, and then how does that show up? And so for me, that happened even before sort of this interaction with spirit guides. Now, spirit guides can be tricky because people in our culture can misinterpret what is an angel, a devil, a jinn, a spirit guide, a disembodied voice, a thought of your own consciousness, and how to separate and identify that from a quote unquote spirit guide. So all world traditions suggests testing any spirit. Is it of God? Is it of devil? Is it here to help? Is it here to hinder? Where is it from? You know, if we're talking about true and indeed spirit guides. And there are all kind of ways to communicate with spirit guides. Crystal work, pendulum work. Of course, other forms of divination that we use to communicate with ancestors, angels, Loa, Orisha, guides, etc. So again, if your head is not clear, or the head of the practitioner you're seeking is not clear, and people are not following a procedure that identifies and clarifies what's being said on the board, or through the crystal, or through whatever the medium that the spirit guide is using to communicate with. Some spirit guides show up like an apparition. Some spirit guides speak audibly in a way that can be heard. So I think how we view and define spirit guide has passed through sort of this Western prism. And we do have to be clear about spirit guide. I think the safest way to do it is through quartz crystal, because of evil, negativity, dark forms can't really pass through quartz crystal, can't crystallize, can't sort of formulate there in that space. And then start with your basic prayer. Who are you? What are you? What is God? How does that show up in my life? How does that manifest? And then be prepared to listen and hear and see the response, because it can come in a dream, it can come in many ways. And so keeping journals, keeping a well documented, detailed journal is sort of crucial. Just sometimes piecing together what's happening and what you're experiencing and where these forces reside and how they're coming through. Be clear about it before you call it your spirit guide. Be clear about it before you claim it to be a part of yourself in some way. Be sure it's helping and not hindering. And by all means, test the spirit. By all means, test the spirit. Adrian is asking, can I please explain what Ashe is and how to utilize the word? It's a Yoruba word, first of all. There's Ashe, the letter E, space, S-E, which is like thank you. And there's a way to say thank you, which is specific to adults, Ashe, and people in your age group, and then young people or common language, Ashe. Then there's also Ashe, A-S-E, and how we use it in terms of Orisha, because it is a Yoruba word. So it has an association to Yoruba, Yoruba culture, Yoruba language, Yoruba religion, Yoruba Orisha, Yoruba power. We now use it universally to just voodoo in general, to just African Black culture in general. And so it means energy. It means thank you. It means amen. It means all these things based on how it's used, the tonation of the word in Yoruba, if you're speaking Yoruba correctly or accurately, to the usage of the word. And of course, there's that sort of magical, energetic Ashe, which is about energy. And it's a energy that exists beyond ourselves, outside ourselves, but also is a shared energy. It also can be conferred upon a person, place, or a thing. It could be brought together just like prayer. And so my Ashe, your Ashe can be unified to further empower something to a higher level, to a greater degree. Ashe cannot be appropriated. Ashe cannot be bastardized. Ashe cannot then be used to do evil or to do darkness with, because it is considered a divine energy, a higher energy, an empowered energy, not a low or based energy. So you can't operate in Ashe and be carnal. You can't operate in Ashe and be fleshly. You can't operate in Ashe and be worldly. You can't operate in Ashe and be ego-based. Ashe is about giving glory to, acknowledgement to, praise to, power to something greater than yourself, greater than your immediate need, greater than the fact that God gave us food, God gave us substance, God gave us strength. And so we all Ashe. It's bigger than that. It is the idea that God is, the Orisha are, the Loa are, that the higher forces are, the ancestors already are. We can't rewrite them, remake them, recreate them, because they already are. And so we say Ashe, there's sort of that infinite energy attachment to Ashe that travels out throughout creation, just like Om. When you say Ashe, when you say man, when you say Aibobo, when you say give thanks, when you say give praise, there's an energy that's transmitted. So, but Ashe, as a word, as a Yoruba word and concept, has many more compound energies attached to it. So when we say Ashe, there's a much bigger thing that's exploding in your brain cells, that's emitting off of your hands, that's registering from your mouth, that's being projected from your third eye when we think of and say and project the word and the usage of that word, whether it's in Yoruba and it's in its most proper context, or now in its more universal spiritual perspective here in the West, when we say, when you find English speaking, voodoo practicing, folks saying Ashe, we're talking about give thanks, amen, but also sort of an explosion of energy that unifies us, that connects us. There's a unity, there's an emoja that is embedded in Ashe and in the usage of the word Ashe. So I appreciate that question. Thank you, Kiona, for assisting me. Thank you, Robin Johnson, for being present and for your comment. I think you're asking a question or making a statement. I'm not sure, Robin Johnson. Robin Johnson says, thank you. I was sure about to ask how to clear our minds and negative energies. And you can clear your mind from negative energies, your consciousness, first by just choosing to do so. First by just agreeing in any particular moment in time space to do so. You could agree to do so now, but you can agree to do so from moment to moment, from event to event, from circumstance to circumstance. And it requires us being still, even in that moment, for at least 3 seconds to gather your thoughts, to realize, okay, wait a minute, this is negative, it's this some bullshit, it's some drama here, and then to withdraw and allow yourself to sort of withdraw physically, literally, or figuratively. But to then choose not to be a party to that thing. Then, of course, there's the vibration that we emit. So you reinforce your thought, your idea of wanting to be free of negative energy, wanting to be free of debilitating energy by what you say, either as a prayer, as a mantra, as a chant, but also by what you say at any given moment in time space. My long-time listeners know that all is a blessing. It's also an opportunity not to say anything negative. It's also an opportunity not to always to respond, and to respond with a organized, projected energy from your mouth that you might not be fully committed to, So I say all is a blessing before I say anything negative, before I say no, before I go into detail about the negative, I say all is a blessing. Um, we can also, of course, do and acquire lave tet and ibori and various cleansings, ritual, ceremonial practices that involve cleansing of the physical head, the literal head, Adrian, but also the cleansing of the consciousness and the part of our head that we view as thought, spirit, energy, feeling, that part of our heads. So there's very simple ways to clear your head. It could be a chant. It could be a safe word. You can create a safe word or a safe phrase like all is a blessing that then, even if you don't have time to stop and think, you have a second to breathe and to get yourself together and to say and to think and to resonate all is a blessing or your positive uh, mantra or your safe word or phrase that then brings you back to clarity. Because even if you have lave tet done or ibori done, ritual cleansing done, life goes on. Life goes on. And so there's always going to be that moment, that opportunity, that crossroads to collect dust, to collect energy, to collect negative energy, to collect dark energy, that which is along the road, that which is thrown at you, projected at you, but also that which you create and self-create inside yourself. So to be able to bring in light, to draw in light, to manifest light from within, regardless of who's around, what's going around, that's God. That's Goddess. That's operating in consciousness that's God-like. The ability to choose to be angry, to choose to be unhappy, to choose to be sad, to choose to be poor, to choose to be prosperous. It makes sense when I say it like that, right? But the opportunity to choose to be positive no matter what the outward demonstration is or might look like, no matter what the outward demonstration of unity is or might look like. I can't tell you how many times I hear, these people ain't organized, our people ain't organized, they're not going to do right, they're not going to follow through, and use as an excuse then not to do, and use that as an excuse then not to participate, and use that as an excuse then not to manifest a demonstration. See, it's okay for you to say, to criticize or to say what isn't or what should be or how it should be. But it's a whole nother thing for you to then demonstrate that, to step into that, to be unity, to show unity, to offer unity, to create a space in which unity can thrive and can survive, to create a space in which unity can step into. I tell my godchildren and my clients all the time, keep your hands open, keep your eyes open, keep your third eye open, keep your heart open, keep your ori open. Because once they're closed, nothing can get in there, nothing can pass through there. Even the idea that there might be an option, an idea that there might be an alternative, an idea that there might be some hidden force and or power in operation for me on my behalf that I can't necessarily see or define. Once you shut down any opportunities for that to enter, then indeed you're shut down. And even if that is occurring, even if that is manifesting, even if the miracles are happening, you still can't see it. Or you'll find a way to logic it away, rationalize it away, reason it away. It's a coincidence. What's a coincidence exactly? Well, it just managed to happen in that right moment in time space. But what is that exactly? And so it is a direction of our third eye and our consciousness and our ability to really create and recreate our reality. obstetricians teach us that we see based on what we believe we see, not just what's actually there, physically there, dimensionally there, but we see and we experience based on what we believe, what we've grown accustomed to believing, what we've grown accustomed to seeing. And as adults, we often close off any opportunity to then recreate and to create and to be imaginative and to be open to the possibilities of those things that we don't know, we don't understand, we cannot necessarily explain. I'm so honored by each and every one of you being present and staying with me anytime I do these 2 hour long, 3 hour long broadcasts. I appreciate your questions, comments, and requests, particularly in this season when there's so much to do. I am always honored and grateful by your greetings and salutations, and I acknowledge each and every one of you, both individually but also collectively in this shared space of gods and goddesses. Please type your questions, comments, or requests in all capital letters so that I can see them and separate them from the greetings and the salutations. Of course, you can still call in for about 5 or 10 more minutes to area code 845-277-9143. 845-277-9143. Unfortunately, when you press your number 1, there is no little beep that goes off that I can hear. I have to actually manually go back to that browser and look. So give me a moment, and if your hand is raised, I will most certainly respond to you. Today is the new moon. Today is the new moon. And the moon cycle, as is cosmic time, universal time. Everything has a time. And so it has a specific time. And so we are experiencing new moon here in this beautiful, historic, and enchanted city of New Orleans, Louisiana. I believe it's 11:13 p.m. Last night we went into new moon. And so now today we are experiencing the eclipse in a particular Asiatic region of the world as we move towards first quarter and then the first full moon of 2020. Two doves, as they used to say in Chicago. So we give honor and praise and thanks for another opportunity to acknowledge the ancestors on shoulders whom we all stand and have our great being. Of course, a great creator God or creator goddess that created all humanity, all life, all that exists within the realms of creation, not just that which exists on our earth, but that which exists in our universe. We acknowledge this first day of Kwanzaa, Umoja, and unity. And we, of course, look forward to tomorrow and the future. And I said the new moon was last night, but the new moon is tonight at 11, at 13 p.m. U.S. Central Standard Time. I don't know why this site is showing it as December 25th. It's actually tonight, December 26th. It's also in connection with the eclipse, and it's not a full eclipse. It's sort of this ring, if you will, where almost the entirety of the sun light is blocked out by the moon, and it presents this sort of ring that is created. That type of eclipse is what we're experiencing. I talked about that in greater detail in maybe 2 shows back. I talked about that. I don't have the details of that right now. And so this is the time for recreating and creating and planning and looking forward to the future and tomorrow and 2020. I also want to take the opportunity to thank my Benin listeners, my listeners in Nigeria, my listeners in Cameroon, my listeners in South Africa, my listeners in Zimbabwe, my listeners in Malawi, my listeners in Kenya and Egypt and Saudi Arabia and Yemen and Brazil, Argentina and Peru, of course, Canada and the US and the UK, London and France and Spain, Portugal and India and Italy, Greece, India, Turkey, China. I appreciate you all. Cambodia. Who's listening to me in Cambodia? Um, Vietnam. Who's listening to me in Vietnam? Australia. I might know who you all are in Australia. New Zealand. People are listening to us in New Zealand. So I'm honored and truly grateful and look forward to another coming year of great broadcasts of Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans, Voodoo Secrets and Recipes. I'm going to change up my format a little bit going into 2020. I'm not going to change the show or the length of the show probably, but just a little bit about what I bring here and how I bring it. Adrian Dorsey is asking, please explain what the Ori is and how to utilize it. What are some ways to service it? And prior to that, Slum Life asks, is Alafia a proper greeting? Um, that's a great question. Let me cover that before I answer you, Adrian. Your question is going to be more complex. Alafia has become a greeting here in the West. It's something that we say in what I have coined to be the Orisha romance. And when I say the Orisha romance, I'm being just a little bit shady, slum life, just a little bit facetious, just a little bit catty. But in actuality, we have a desire for African culture and tradition and know very little about it. We don't know a lot about ethnic groups. We don't know a lot about languages, linguistic differences, of which there are over 200 just in Nigeria alone. So we isolated Yoruba. We've isolated Swahili for Kwanzaa. We've isolated particular cultures, particular language groups, and then applied them to our Western sentiment. I'm not suggesting that that's a bad thing. We've got to start somewhere. We've got to have a unified sense of understanding first, somewhere. But then I would hope that by following Kwanzaa or Dr. Karanga or the Orisha romance, that people would then do the work. Wherever you are, start with wherever you are. So if your passion is Oshun, then study everything Oshun. Read everything Oshun, which is going to require you then going to Nigeria. If not physically or literally, figuratively, and reading Yoruba documents and learning how to use your Google Translate and learning how to cross culturally read and access documents, book, and information from both sides of the Atlantic, not just one. So Alafia, like Hotep, like many other words in our sort of Black consciousness, have taken on a meaning and a life unto themselves. So I wouldn't say Alafia is a bad word. Alafia has more than one meaning. We say Alafia in a particular divination, it has a meaning. We say Alafia and it means life, but how it's used, like most words in these Asiatic tongues, is everything to what it really means. So when we say it and when we use it, we're often using it in a very generic, out of contextual property. It's not contextually correct often in how we use it. So it means yes, it can mean life. It can mean the word yes. It can mean many other things. So Bawoni is a more appropriate Yoruba greeting. Um, um, There are other words within the language, within the language that can be applied that might be more contextually correct, but they might not resonate in social media where a lot of us are just acting out, Google searching, binging, but not often applying this stuff in the environment and in the context in which it really means and in which it really stands. People say Hotep, I say Hotepu, because Hotep as a word is really singular and it's almost being used like a noun, whereas Hotepu is about acknowledgement of the people. It's about sending your greeting, your blessing, your acknowledgement of life, your acknowledgement of power directly to the people. But it comes from having a different grammatical understanding of ancient Egyptian language and how to use it, how it's used. So I don't run into many people who say Hotepu with a W-U at the end, who understand what Hotepu means. And even when I respond Hotepu, they're still saying Hotep and don't make that connection because it's not explained to them or they don't have an understanding of that. So Lafia is good in the West. Lafia is good in the diaspora because of the meaning that we've now sort of given to it. But there are absolutely other words, other phrases that stand up as more reliable. Um, if you want to ask me what is a more appropriate greeting, what is a contextually correct greeting, then you would have to look at the language of Yoruba. So, for instance, when we're representing Voodoo, are we representing Haitian Voodoo, Louisiana Voodoo? Are we representing Fa? Are we representing the Akan? So how we would then say greetings, how we would then say salutations, how we would then say life, it's going to show up differently. Now, when you type Alafia and spell it correctly in Google Translate, and then have it translated into English, it shows up as peace. It shows up as peace. But if I type peace into the Google Translator and then have it translated into Yoruba, it will say Alafia, but then the whole spelling changes. And how it's spelled is critical to what it means in Yoruba. And languages like Yoruba and various other traditions. Forgive me, that means that I just lost my Blog Talk Radio phone line. And so I apologize. I'm not quite sure what's going on with Blog Talk Radio. I just timed out or lost my connection to Blog Talk Radio, so forgive me. You can, of course, watch this YouTube Live and experience the remaining 5 minutes or so of the show, however much longer I'm going to speak here and respond to your questions. But technology is what it is. I would have liked to have ended with some music and ended my Blog Talk Radio on my own. But if you heard that disconnection dial tone just then, you understand what just occurred. But yeah, Alafia is good as a greeting, beloved, if you understand what you're saying, if you understand what it means, and you acknowledge that. But there are indeed other ways to meet, greet, say hello, acknowledge people within the tradition of Ifa, Lukomi, Santeria, Apollo, Voodoo, all the various traditions that sort of branch off of sort of this affair, this love attraction we have for Yoruba culture and language. I hope I answered your question clearly. Some life. Please chime in real quick if I didn't. Now, Adrian Dorsey, and some of your response can also be a response to what is Ashe, what is Alakia, etc. Because I'm introducing linguistics, language, that these words have other meanings than just common daily usage in Yoruba, but then take on other meanings in the religion of Ifa and Orisha. And even when we look at Lukomi and Santeria, they are often using a more ancient form of Yoruba that doesn't match up literally with modern spoken Yoruba. So all that comes into play. So when I now go into explaining what Ori is, I'm now going into sort of the religion, sort of what's sacred about Ifa, Orisha, and the practice in Yoruba. There are initiations to this information, to this knowledge. And of course, I'll never violate that to the best of my knowledge and my ability on any of these platforms. But in its most generic sense, it is your head or your consciousness. There are applications to Ori that are specific to people who are in the tradition of Ifa and Ifa practice that come by way of divination, that come by way of initiation. There's a little Ile, which means house, that's created for Ori within the tradition that only a practitioner, a Babalao, um, can create or make for you that plays into what Ori is, and a complete explanation of what Ori is. There's information tied to that. There's taboos tied to that. There are things that are for you. There are things that are against you that are tied to that. That are certain activities you shouldn't participate in that are tied to that. But at its most basic level, it is your head. It is your consciousness, that which is contained within your head, in your consciousness. And without Ori, it is said in Yoruba culture and tradition that no Orisha can assist you, no Orisha can help you. That Ori is your first Orisha. It is indeed the most important Orisha, in that if your head doesn't will it, if your head doesn't allow it, it cannot be so. So if your head doesn't will love, if your head doesn't allow for prosperity, if your head doesn't allow for a breakthrough, if your head doesn't allow for success, if your head doesn't allow for growth, if your head doesn't allow for change and transformation, no spirit can force that on you. No deity or power can force that on you. Can force you to walk in now into prosperity and sort of shortchange your will. And the idea of it being subverted and us receiving knowledge, power, truth, wisdom without preparation has examples of destructive results, catastrophic results in world cultures, in world practices, in world traditions, as it applies to, breaking through the wisdom, gaining control of a secret or higher universal truth, but only to then try and use it for self or for the flesh, or in a way that does not ultimately benefit the whole. So Ori is first and foremost your personal and direct connection to God and your God self. It's not one or the other. It is indeed both. You as God, but also yourself as God, connected to the totality of God, to the fuller, greater body of God and what God is. And so, depending on your path, depending on your tradition, there are ways in which your head is addressed. In Voodoo, in the West, Haitian Voodoo, and in some cases Louisiana Voodoo, you hear about Labe Tet. Labe meaning to cleanse or to wash, and Tet meaning the head. And so there are root applications, herbal applications, bark-like applications. There is indeed inward applications that we might call diet, that we might call, getting the appropriate nutrients, making sure you're drinking the appropriate water. Because even if your head, your ori is clear and functioning and opening, but your brain is dehydrated, what now? What then? So the teachings of how we address ori, I'm not going to share that. That comes through the tradition, through the practitioners in the tradition who sort of teach, share, and apply that work. Um, my godchildren have a greater understanding of what that is. Of course, there are searchable explanations about what that is, and some practitioners go into a great degree of detail about it than others. But in keeping in line with the tradition, it is a series of washes, baths, offerings that are made both to the literal physical head and body, but also to the figurative spiritual head and body that help to promote cleanliness, openness, purity, balance, and the lack of manipulation, infiltration, perpetration from outside powers and or forces. Please do give me your next question. I appreciate you. I appreciate you all. Um, if I haven't missed any of your questions, comments, or requests, I am going to move forward momentarily. I certainly appreciate being present with you in this space each and every day that I'm able to do so at noon U.S. Central Standard Time, both here on Blog Talk Radio, but also on YouTube Live. For those of you who do acknowledge Kwanzaa, I wish you the best and most fruitful and abundant Kwanzaa. I pray that you hear and lift up every voice and sing at least one today, at least once or twice today. And I look forward to connecting with you again here at the Crossroads at noon U.S. Central Standard Time here on Blog Talk Radio, but also on YouTube Live, youtube.com/Voodoo Thai, TYE, and also Blog Talk Radio at blogtalkradio.com/the hyphen or the subtraction mark DivinePrince. And of course, for my next episode, my live listening and calling number is area code 845-277-9143. And until next time, I offer you divine, all blessed peace and love, joy and prosperity, revelation and manifestation, here and now, in this most present moment in divine time space. Otherwise, all else is foolishness. All else is nonsense. All else is just a waste of your time. All is truly and indeed a blessing. Ashe.